This video may be covering a niche topic, but I feel like it is important that we start to have this discussion sooner rather than later. Infantry armor in Star Citizen has recently become a significant topic of debate. Much of this debate has been spurred on by the recent TTK increase, but also because people are finally asking, why would I ever wear anything other than heavy armor? In the current version of the game, the answer is that you wouldn't wear anything other than heavy armor. It provides immense benefits at zero gameplay cost. There isn't any situation where heavy armor isn't the best option. In this video, I want to address that and provide feedback and suggestions to not only balance the armor, but also improve the game as a whole. Armor should be a choice. Deciding on the type of armor to wear must be a choice you as a player make. I'm a big believer that being forced to make a choice in a game adds to the fun and depth of the game. Right now, there is no choice. You have no reason to wear anything other than heavy armor. If you're serious about the game anyway. You can carry more ammo, more equipment, more weapons, and you're simply harder to kill. There is no playstyle outside of just wearing heavy armor. And because of the absolute freedom you have to do anything and everything while wearing this armor, you have no choice other than to play at a disadvantage. Being in anything other than heavy is the wrong choice. How to add choice. Giving advantages and disadvantages to the type of armor you wear are easy ways to give players a choice. The first one we've seen was at CitizenCon, where they showed armor giving off a signature similar to a ship's cross-section. If you don't know, emissions are how we detect ships on radar in Star Citizen, with cross-section being one of them. Infantry armor would likely be similar to cross-section. How would this work? The lighter your armor, the less detectable you are. This allows for ground-based stealth gameplay without gimmicks such as cloaking, and it lets you decide what you value more, right? Being stealthy and going quiet, or being heavy and going in loud. Perhaps somewhere in the middle with medium. You got some choices if you do this. This is an excellent way for armor to influence how you want to play and ensure some level of balance. Being able to take some shots is nice, but you may think it's even better not to be shot at all. And this is where being in light armor would come in handy. But as good as these balance ideas from CIG are, I think we can and should go a little bit deeper. Each of these suggestions is going to have some sacrifices the player will have to make, but I feel like this adds to the fun and encourages armor to be seen as a choice to suit the playstyle or the mission. Remember, limiting a player's freedom isn't always a bad thing. As a matter of fact, it is usually a good thing, since too much freedom creates the problem we have now. So let's start off with light armor first. Light armor. This armor is, as the name implies, the lightest you can equip. You have no restrictions on the type of vehicles you can pilot or drive, and you can man any turrets. I would also be shooting for about a 0.5 TTK on this armor to the torso, but the trade-off is you're incredibly difficult to detect. This would be very helpful for players that want to sneak around and get up close to destroy their enemy before they can react, or perhaps the lower emissions would be beneficial to somebody that wants to fulfill a sniper or reconnaissance role. Since you're hard to detect on scans, you'd be much better suited for scouting or dispatching of your enemies from afar, but since you're not very bullet resistant, it wouldn't be wise to charge in guns blazing. It also becomes an excellent choice for pilots because they can self-insert into the battlefield and sneak up to the objective. It's also good if you have to eject because it will allow you to evade your enemies should things not go your way. An additional restriction I would put on this armor is how many weapons they can carry. I would only allow for one primary, something rifle size like a P4, use your imagination. A sidearm and both of the tools, the med gun and the pyro tool. I'd keep the current magazine and grenade limits too, of course, which is whatever we have in the game. We're going to talk about food and water later in the video, but light armor would consume the least amount of food and water, which would make it suitable for extended periods of stealth and reconnaissance. And again, this will make more sense as the video goes on. Medium armor. I would hope for about a 1 second time to kill to the torso with this armor. Like light armor, you can pilot or drive any vehicle you want, as well as get into any turret. Your emissions are between light and heavy, and it is best to see this as a general purpose all-around armor. Something good for a player that wants a bit of flexibility, or perhaps a bounty hunter who needs to land and go into a cave to hunt his quarry. This armor would also come with some slight weapon restrictions, but to reflect the versatility of this armor, I wouldn't limit it too much. You can carry one primary and one secondary weapon. Both would be rifle-sized, so for example, a P4 and a shotgun, as well as your sidearm and your tools, the med gun and the multi-tool. Again, the grenade and ammo capacity would remain the same as it is on live. I would not really mess with that too much. The big difference here, though, is I would not allow this armor to equip or carry the railgun or any other man-portable anti-vehicle weapons. While we are shooting for versatility with this armor, I do not want it to become the all-around best armor. This is all about choice, remember? As for the food and water consumption, medium armor would consume a normal amount of food and water, so it would be just pretty basic, right? It maintains a good balance between stealth and combat effectiveness. Heavy armor. This would ideally have about a 1.5 second time to kill, maybe higher, depending on how SIG feels about that, but I still think 1.5 seconds is pretty good for this armor set. You should not be able to fly ships in this armor. That's it. You cannot fly them. I'd argue the only thing you can pilot in heavy armor should be ground vehicles, and certain ones at that. Think like the Cyclone series of buggies, anything open top, grav bikes, etc. I wouldn't even allow them to man ship turrets. These are a lot of restrictions. The trade-off is that if you take the time and effort to deploy a squad of guys in heavy armor, who, by the nature of wearing heavy armor, cannot deploy themselves, they should be a credible combat threat, one above light and medium. Heavy armor would be able to equip tools, sidearms, a primary weapon, and a special weapon such as the railgun. The ground emissions on this are going to be high. You're going to be able to detect them from range and all that stuff, but you're not going to care. Your intentions are well known, and subtlety is not your concern. Heavy armor consumes the most amount of food and water. It's going to require substantial resources to sustain the robust combat capabilities that it offers. But these limitations are why I'm advocating for it to be durable and tough, and really specialized at its combat role. How armor types affect food and drink consumption. I know I mentioned earlier that I was going to cover this in a bit more detail, so I'm going to get right to that now. In addition to their tactical advantages and limitations, armor types should also influence the consumption of food and drink within the game. This introduces another layer of decision-making for the players, as they must consider not only their combat capabilities, but also their ability to sustain themselves in the field. For instance, wearing light armor would result in the lowest consumption of food and water. This makes it the preferred choice for extended missions, requiring stealth and reconnaissance, where minimizing resource usage is paramount to mission success. On the other hand, heavy armor demands a substantial amount of food and water to sustain its robust combat capabilities. This kind of fits with its, support, it needs to be supported kind of thing. This creates a trade-off for players, forcing them to balance the benefits of heavy protection against the logistical challenge of maintaining adequate supplies. By integrating food and drink mechanics to the game, which SIG has already done, we not only enhance the, I hate that word, the realism, but also add another dimension of player decision-making. Whether embarking on a covert operation behind enemy lines or engaging in a protracted firefight, players must now consider the logistical implications of their armor choice, further enriching the gameplay experience in my opinion, and also adding to that, another word I hate, if you know me, immersion. Why we are restricting vehicles to armor types. We are restricting vehicle control to armor types because we, again, want armor to be seen as a choice, but also want to encourage interdependency on other players to deliver other players to a combat area. This is not only a form of logistics, but also a balancing consideration for the armor. Heavy armor can be powerful, provided it can be delivered to the battle by somebody wearing medium or light armor. By restricting heavy armor from manning turrets, you are relegating them to the ship's security details and not allowing them to fulfill an important crew role in the ship, only to be able to hop out and fulfill the close combat duty when it is necessary. Again, a choice. If you're in that heavy armor, you're an infantry combat specialist, and if you want to do something else, the armor has to come off. The reason we are restricting heavy armor from driving certain types of ground vehicles is that, Again, we want them to depend upon the lighter armors to deliver them to the battle via Spartan APC or something similar. We do not want them to be able to pilot heavy combat vehicles such as tanks, only to have them dismount whenever they want and begin engaging infantry and vehicles on foot if they wanted to. Battlefield games do this, and it's so stupid, and I hate it. Allowing them to control light open-top vehicles, such as the Cyclone or hover bikes, gives them a little bit of versatility when deployed on the ground to transport themselves. Plus, I think it would give some of these lighter open-top vehicles another interesting trait to better help define them. It also helps to give certain unpopular vehicles and ships a purpose. Suddenly, the ability to carry 20 heavily armored soldiers on a Valkyrie makes the ship sound just a little bit more appealing. Dropships would now have a slight reason to exist using this balanced philosophy. The same goes for the aforementioned Spartan APC. If the selling point of the vehicle or ship is the number of heavily armored soldiers it can carry, it too now has a purpose and can also be seen as a choice. Pretty interesting how this all ties in, doesn't it? Why are we restricting weapons to armor? We're restricting weapons to armor because it helps aid balance and differentiate the classes of armor from one another. By limiting the light to a single primary, we give more purpose to the medium. By restricting the medium to 2 primaries but no specials, we're adding another benefit to the heavy. Because light and medium cannot defeat vehicles with special weapons on foot, we now have a benefit to being heavy. Since heavy cannot pilot their own heavy combat vehicles, they can now justify having the special weapons to combat those vehicles. This also prevents the hard-to-detect light and medium armored players from sniping vehicles and ships with a railgun. Again, why would they need the railgun? They can pilot, drive, or man any other vehicle or ship in a game. Since the heavy cannot, he needs the railgun. How do we address the mixing and matching of armor types? Currently, the most optimal loadout in Star Marine is to run a heavy core, heavy helmet, and light arms and legs. It looks ridiculous, but it gives you the best combination of speed and survivability. To address this and better help facilitate balance, I would lock the type of armor you wear to the type of armor your core is. Meaning, if you're wearing a heavy core, you can only wear a heavy helmet, heavy legs, and heavy arms. You can still mix and match between different sets of the same core you have equipped, but you can no longer mix and match types for the best min-max armor loadout. This is a pretty good balance because it lets you still play dress up, but also not break the balance and cause the nonsense we have going on right now. Who can be one-shot? In an ideal game, nobody wearing armor should ever be one-shot. But since people think that sniping, which is the lowest risk form of gameplay in any game, should also be rewarded with the highest reward of a single one-shot kill, we may as well balance around it. So, the only one who cannot be killed by one shot would be the soldier in heavy armor. It would, at the least, take one head and one body. This would be another acceptable trade-off to not being able to deliver yourself to combat. When you do get there, you cannot be one shot. And yes, I'm sure I'll get this in the comments, I'm totally biased. I think that snipers in games ruin games. I think they are low skill, low talent, low risk. Most people like to try and come up with this ridiculous idea of like,
well, actually, if the guy's running and I shoot him in the head, that's really hard and I should get a one-shot.
No, what actually happens is what you do is you probably suck, number one, okay? You can't track for anything. So what you do is you wait for that guy to stand still, and then when he does, you put your mouse over his head, you shoot him, and you get your little dopamine hit. That's why you like sniping. I hate snipers, and I hate you. Conclusion. For too long now, there really hasn't been a reason to wear anything other than heavy armor. I don't count speed as one of them in a game where everybody has a spaceship. So I think that if we go through with some, ideally all of these, because I'm super biased, or my ideas, right? But if we go through with these, I think that we could have a better game where we actually have a bit of choice and consequence that players can make. I think it adds a nice little, for me personally, I'm a heavy armor guy. I like to wear heavy armor. I'll always wear it. It gives me an excuse not to learn how to fly. But also, kidding aside, it lets me really focus in on what it is that I want to do, which is being a ground pounder, being a quote-unquote Marine or whatever it is. And I think that's a lot of what Star Citizen is about. It's about living that world and feeling like you're part of it. And by limiting player freedom and not allowing us to be omni soldiers that can do everything, that can fly, that can drive, that can snipe, that can do whatever it is, right? We create that more personalized, specialized role. But I think players, whether they know it or not, are actually going to like that. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's not a very popular topic, but as always, hit me up in the comments and we'll have debate. And I'm waiting for you snipers out there to start getting at me in the comments. So go for it. I'm ready to fight you.